We're now returning for the CPOC meeting. Executive session is over. I move that we adjourn the meeting. Motion. Second. All in favor? Aye. We'll start governance in 2 minutes. Good afternoon, everyone. Last committee meeting of the day, Corporate Governance Committee. Any public speakers?
There are no public speakers.
Could I have the approval of the minutes? Second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Now we'll have a presentation on the recent developments in corporate governance. Lamont?
Yes, thank you. Each year I present a quick presentation on recent developments in corporate governance, usually focusing on any pronouncements that we have received from the Authority Budget Office. As you know, the Authority Budget Office was formed in 2009 pursuant to the Public Authorities Reform Act, and one of the things that they do is they provide guidance to public authorities in areas of corporate governance. So at this point, I'd like to make a couple of points that I think are relevant to this committee. First, the ABO did issue a report this year regarding those public authorities which had failed to file reports. They've also issued 3 additional reports on restrictions on grants, loans made by public authorities. They also issued a report on board member training, and they also issued a report on best practices for public authority board meetings. So I'll take the first one, which is the failure to file required reports. I am happy to tell this committee that the MTA was fully compliant, and we have filed all reports required by the Authority Budget Office. One thing that I will let the committee know that we did receive communication from the ABO this year claiming at one point that we had not complied with our filing requirements. What we ended up having to do is providing them what we call the compliance roadmap. Within the tens of thousands of pages of disclosure that we make annually, every bit of information that we were required to disclose was there. So going forward, we will be providing them with a very detailed map showing them where all the information that they require can be located. The ABO also issued a policy guidance document 15-01 regarding restrictions on grants and loans made by public authorities. Basically, it is a restriction on the public authority's ability to loan or grant money to civic associations, private businesses. We are currently looking at those guidelines to see if there is anything that the MTA currently needs to do as it relates to our governance documents to address that issue. They also issued 15-02, which deals with board member training. The fundamental components of that guideline states that board members should have an orientation. I'm sure all of you remember the orientation that you received when you became board members. It also requires that you can have corporate governance training. Again, I'm sure you remember the corporate governance training that we provided you as well. It also requires that board members have retraining upon reappointment to the board or periodically. They're recommending every 3 years, and we'll take a look at that provision to see if that's something that we might recommend to this committee. It also requires certain record keeping regarding your compliance with training, and as you probably know, we keep very good records of all the training that you do. In summation, I believe we are probably well ahead of the curve in terms of board member training, and if there's anything that we need to bring to your attention, we will. They also issued in January, at the end of January, best practices for board meetings. It was a lengthy document. I actually think I gave you copies of that. It's about 27 pages regarding what they recommend board should do as it relates to meetings. We are going through that, and we'll provide a report to the Chief of Staff and General Counsel regarding how we perceive and what any issues we may have as it relates to compliance with that. I will tell you that we have taken an initial look at those recommendations, and I believe we are in alignment with every single one of them. I think anything that we would recommend would be highly technical in nature and nothing more. I've given you copies of all of the reports that I've talked about. We've also loaded them onto Director's Desk in your document section. And if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer it. Thank you.
Hearing none, we'll move on to the next report, which is the review and approve the mission statement and measurement report, which is an ongoing requirement, I believe. Lamont?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Good
I'm
afternoon.
sorry.
That's
Donna.
okay. Good afternoon, everyone. One of the reports that we are required to submit to the Budget Office is this particular report, the Mission Statement, Measurements, and Performance Indicators Report. The one in your book covers fiscal 2014. It's similar in content and style to the reports we've submitted in previous years. Just to give you a brief overview, what we are required to do under the Public Authorities Law is to review our mission statement, the goals in support of that statement, the stakeholders affected by these goals, and how the agency has performed against those goals on an annual basis. The report here not only gives you the performance against goal, but also some narrative to explain why the goals reflect what they do. Once this document is approved by the board, it will be sent up to Albany to the Budget Office. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Notwithstanding the fact we report on an awful lot of things, it's good to hear that we're resubmitting it.
Very good. We do need a vote, though.
Okay. Second, any comments or questions? All in favor? Aye. Review and approve drug and alcohol policies for the MTA and its agencies.
The MTA and its agencies are governed by a variety of laws and regulations, including but not limited to the Drug Free Workplace Act, the Federal Transit Administration regulations entitled Prevention of Alcohol Misuse and Prohibited Drug Use in Transit Operations, and the Federal Railroad Administration regulations entitled Control of Alcohol and Drug Use. While some of these laws and regulations differ as to the specific requirements necessary for the compliance by the covered agency, each has as underlying principle helping prevent accidents, injuries, and fatalities resulting from the misuse of alcohol or prohibited drugs by employees. While only some of the agencies are actually required to bring their policies to the board, we believe as a good corporate governance practice that we should bring all of the agency policies to this board as a group. We would like to note that New York City Transit's original drug and alcohol policy was approved by this board on March 2000. What you have in your book currently is an updated version of that. So we would move for your approval of the various MTA and agency drug and alcohol policies.
All in favor? Aye. Now we have the review and approve all agency travel and business expense policy.
Pursuant to Public Authorities Law, Section 2824, this board is required to issue certain policies, including policies related to travel and business expenses. This policy was last revised by the board on March 2014. We are making 3 substantive changes to that travel policy. One, we are requiring employees to submit their travel reimbursement report within 30 days from the conclusion of travel. We are establishing procedures for the use of the MTA corporate card as it relates to travel, and we are allowing myself to grant waivers to this policy directive when it is in the best interest of the MTA.
Do we have a motion? Second. Any comments or questions? Sure, go ahead.
Approximately how many people have the MTA corporate card?
It's actually a very small number, mostly at headquarters. You know, the issue that we were facing was that we have policies regarding the utilization of procurement cards, but they really didn't talk to the travel cards. So this is in an effort to make sure that our policies are all inclusive, both in the procurement card area as well as the travel card area as well. But it's a very small group.
I think that it should be small. I think that the submission of expenses, legitimate expenses, should be appropriately submitted and repaid very quickly, because I don't think we should earn float off of our staff incurring proper travel. But the notion of cards is one that should be carefully monitored, yeah.
Yes.
In my time at Transit, we'd gone through periods of no cards, limited cards, and then there was one period of time where we opened it up, and we've now since reduced it again, because I wouldn't say the likelihood, but the potential for abuse is relatively large with a card, so that's where we limit its distribution. All those in favor? Aye. MTA policies in connections with provisions for the Public Authorities Law.
As I had mentioned previous staff summary, Public Authorities Law 2824 requires the board establish certain policies, including policies regarding the payment of salary compensation, reimbursement to, and establishment of rules for time and attendance. The board is being asked today to ratify and approve all revisions to policies since 2006 board approval. Going forward, any subsequent revisions to these policies as they exist today will be presented to this board for review and approval.
Second, any comments or questions? All those in favor? Aye.
Public Authorities Law Section, Thank you. Public Authorities Law Section 2879 requires the MTA to annually review and approve its all-agency procurement guidelines and all agency guidelines for the procurement of services. These guidelines were last approved by this board at its March 2014 meeting. However, the last revision by the board was actually in July of 2013. We are not making any proposed revisions to those guidelines at this time.
Motion. Second. Any comments or questions? All in favor? Aye.
Nothing further on the agenda.
That concludes the items on the agenda. So, rather perfunctory meeting. Can I have a motion to adjourn? Seconded. All in favor? Aye. Thank you.